Hi, and welcome to the Tales from the Trail podcast, brought to you by Matchplay. This podcast was created to bring insights to you regarding the world of college athletics recruiting. We at Matchplay are here to help you navigate what can be an overwhelming and stressful process by providing valuable wisdom and advice from coaches, recruits, parents, and industry experts to guide you in making informed decisions. It's all about finding the right place, not just any place. I'm Scott Cooper, the founder of Matchplay, and I hope you find the podcast enjoyable and, more importantly, highly beneficial. Hey, so Cheese, tell us about that kid you were just talking about that you're helping out.
Yeah. Right before we press play, we were talking about a few kids in the recruiting process, and there was a pretty good story that popped up on our radar this week, this recruiting cycle. A kid had called me. We were pretty far along with him. We really liked him. We wanted him to come play for us, and he was getting some substantial Division I interest. And we're a Division III school, and I used to be 17 once. I remember what it was like when a Division I school was talking to me. So I was excited, and I wanted to help the kid. I really liked him. So I asked him a few questions because he told me he was about to commit there. And it just seemed like a weird fit for me. I was like, that just doesn't really make sense. We've been recruiting thousands of kids over the years. So got a pretty good eye for this stuff. And so I asked him a couple of questions. I said, well, are they giving you any money? And, his response was, well, they told me I needed to commit first before I get any scholarship, discussions, which that seemed backwards for me. And then I asked him, well, what position do they see you playing? And he said center back. I said, cool. So what's their returning center back situation? And his response was, well, they started a freshman and a sophomore last year. And so, just two questions, 30 seconds of chatting with the kid, and it pretty much solidified my thoughts. And so I just kind of was like, well, you don't know your financial situation before you commit, and you're going to have to go in and beat out two kids that started and played, all the time for them last year. And one's got 2 years left. One will have 3 years left. I mean, what are your thoughts on getting on the field soon? And, then he responded with, well, if coach said, if I win the job, I get to play. And, my response to that's always simple. That's everybody in the country on every program. I mean, if you win the job, you win the job because, well, our job is to win, and I want the guy that's going to win me the games. And so that's true everywhere. You don't need to hear that from a coach. And so it just seemed really odd to me, but I talked to the kid. I asked him a few questions, and, not trying to, dismiss the school or anything, but he ended up not committing there, keeping his search open. And it seems like he found a much better fit. But those are just a couple of the questions that we don't think that we're hearing, kids ask enough. They're not doing the deep dive they need to do, in order to stay out of the portal, in order to find the right fit. And, that's just one of many examples. I mean, we've come across so many over the years, and that was just so recent. But yeah, that one, I'm glad it worked out for him. It seems like he might have found a better fit.
Right. I mean, I wonder how many kids, make a decision to go to a school that isn't the best fit, and they end up with a little regret, and they end up, like you said, then possibly transferring. Or Norris, you added a little earlier that there are a lot of kids who end up not even playing soccer eventually because of their decision. I know that you've had experience. Oh, both of you, I'm sure, have had experience with kids like that would have been a good fit for you probably, and went to a different place and didn't pan out for them. So, here, this is our podcast. We're calling it Tales from the Trail. I have Justin Chezem, who's the head men's soccer coach at Christopher Newport University in Newport News and in Virginia. And we all call him Cheese. So when you hear us saying Cheese, we're not talking about lunch. We're talking about Justin. Then we've got Chris Norris, who's the head men's soccer coach at William & Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. That's a Division I school, and Christopher Newport is a Division III school. So So yeah, we're here to discuss some of the things that try to get some insights from these guys about some of the things that can be overwhelming and a little intimidating, and be a source of anxiety when you're going through the recruiting process.
Scott,
So
I'd like to add, or rather dispute, one part of Justin's story there. I honestly don't think he does remember what it's like to talk to a Division I coach.
Well, okay. In my defense, I went to the Colonial Kicks camp, and Al Albert was running it, and I said hi to him. So
I think we gave you a C plus.
that's fair. That's fair. But Steve wasn't my coach, is what you're saying.
yikes.
Oh no, all of my Division I contacts have come since my playing career was over. That is factual.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other great thing about having you guys on is you both went through the process. I mean, it was during the Paleolithic age, but you guys still went through it.
It is interesting to know, like, it was pre-email. I mean, like, we waited for letters in the mail. I mean,
It was
that's
hard.
what it was. It was, and you know how many schools I would pull up, like, what's a Christopher Newport? Like, I didn't know. You know, I didn't just pop up on, like, we didn't have quick internet where I just pop up and see what type of school it was. And so I can't tell you how many letters I just threw in the trash.
Yeah. I mean, so Cheese, there were some interesting things to ask you about out of your story there. That's kind of like making sure that you do some research before you even start the process, right? And understanding, about a program and who their roster is and that sort of thing before you have conversations and before you decide to start reaching out. Maybe you guys can talk a little bit about like the things that you've seen that are an indication that a kid hasn't really, invested a lot of time into the process, so to speak.
Well, I mean, look, an obvious one that we sometimes get, and it's not that often, but it does happen more than once. For example, if it's like an open house on our campus or something, so it's a kid that's coming to William and Mary because they like William and Mary, and they just are going to check in with us to see about the soccer program, and they, email us in advance, set up a time to talk, come into the office, and then one of the questions they ask is, "So, are you guys Division I or Division III?" I immediately, know that I'm probably wasting my time.
Yeah, I got a kid coming in 45 minutes today. I'm very interested to see how the conversation goes. I don't know who the kid is, but you're right. I mean, you get questions like that all the time. And to your point, Scott, that you were talking about, get online, go to the roster. You can see so many details, and you can answer so many questions right there on the front end. I'm currently recruiting goalies, and that's the prime position. I mean, I lost a goalie this year, and I'm pretty sure he's going to sit for 3 years. I feel bad saying that. He's a good kid. I hope it works out for him, but there are young, good goalies that are there. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't think that they're rotating goalkeepers. It usually doesn't happen. For us, you could pop online right now and see, okay, they've got this many center backs, this many center mids, wingers, whatever. You can then look at their stats to see how many have played, or, oh, wow, it's all the older kids at center mid are the ones that are playing, and 2 of their 3 starters are graduating. Like that's prime for a center mid in this class to say, hey, I know you need help right away. The chance to play there is early. It's better, and it gets you the chance to play right away. And then you could also dig a little deeper. We all have certain types of kids that we like to recruit certain positions. We're not all the exact same. And you could click on their bios. You could say, oh, wow, look at their forwards are all 6'4", 6'5". Like not the case for me, but like that tells you a story. You're a 5'9". I was a 5'9" center back. I wasn't going to get a lot of love. It just wasn't going to happen. And but if I had the chance to look online and look at these rosters, I would have said, wow, yeah, those guys over at William Mary are 6'3" and 6'5", and freshman and sophomore. I'm probably not going to play too early, or they're definitely not going to recruit me. You could tell a lot of the story long before you even jump on a call with the coach.
Yeah. You could play for Manchester United, though.
Right. I turned that down to go to Christopher Newport. So, yeah, I won my degree. Yes.
Good thinking. Yeah, I obviously I mean, the websites now, you can see how many minutes a kid has played and where they came from and all of their stats. So it's behooves a recruit to understand as much as they can about not just the team and their record, but what the players are up to on the field and that sort of thing. So yeah, so as a kid is starting to reach out to you guys, they've done their homework a little bit. They've kind of pared down, where they may want to go to school, and so they've fallen on, Christian Newport and William and Mary because they live fairly close. They're from Richmond or something like that. So what's the process? Like, what's their first step in? Do they pick up the phone and call you guys, or are they? Obviously, email is probably. I'm not going to dumb this down too much. So they send you an email, and what are the things that you guys are looking for in an email to, kind of pull it out of the hundreds that you guys get all the time? Norris?
I mean, look, the critical pieces of information. So, as you mentioned, we get a high volume of contact, usually firstly through email. And if we have to go searching for things like your graduation year, your GPA, the club team you play on, the positions that you play or position that you play, the key pieces of information that can very quickly give us a snapshot of who you are and whether you're likely to be a good fit or not. So like GPA, for example, that's one that will very quickly separate kids. If a kid falls below a certain GPA, like we won't even be able to consider them because our admission standards are quite high. So having that key information readily available in a format that's easy to notice, it's like sometimes you'll get an email and the only place that the graduation year is located is maybe in the subject line of the email. It's like we're reading through the email and it's like, what year is this guy? I don't even know how I can respond because I don't know, based on NCAA rules, because I don't know when he's graduating. And then eventually I find it's in the subject line, and that's the only place that it's located. It's like, I'm already a little bit annoyed or frustrated because I've had to, dig a little bit just to find information. And again, I know it seems like a small thing, but because of the volume that we're getting, we're trying to work quickly a lot of times to make sure that we do respond appropriately to everyone who shows some interest in us.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, some of the best emails I've received, I got most of the info in the subject line. I'm just sifting through my emails and I go, okay, 2023 grad, some ECNL, MLS Next. So I see oh, wow, good club team. And then they throw in 4.3 GPA, something that's going to really like, oh, wow, okay. Our average kids are close to 4.0. This is the type of kid I'm looking for. And then I'll open that email. Now I'm excited about this email. And then I'm going to dig through it a little bit more. And Nora said it. We just want the important highlights, and we want it right away. You could have put your grad, your GPA, your club right away. I want position you are. If we got a big tournament next weekend. Cool. Give me that schedule right away. I need your jersey number without sifting through. I want to add that to my little Excel spreadsheet that I'm making for my staff. And if you have a highlight, cool. Throw your highlight video in there and make it 2-3 minutes and put your good stuff right away. And ideally, I spend less than a minute per email. Ideally, I mean, sometimes it's like, wow, I got to sift. I'm adding you to my database or something. But if not, I mean, how many emails are we going to get in the next 10 days, Chris? I mean, it's a huge event. It's a national event, and there's going to be emails all over the place from all over the country. And to think that I'm going to be able to go through all those, write them all down, spend 10 minutes and it's just not going to happen. And, so make sure you put all the stuff in there quick, all the important bullet points, your schedule, your number. And then if you've got something special about you, I want it. If you scored 30 goals last year, tell me. If you're a goalie and you've got 10 straight shutouts and you won 3 PKs, something awesome, well, let me know. It's going to encourage me to turn on your highlights and start the recruiting process.
And you guys like it when you guys are just CC'd and it's just a kind of a blast email that's going out to.
Hey, coach. Hey, coach, I'm interested in your school, not the name of the school. Those are all really good stuff.
Right.
The best is when you click on it and you see all, like, you didn't CC or blind copy. It's, wow, there's 400 schools you just wrote, hey, coach, to. I'm super interested in your school. Great.
Right. So what do you guys typically do with emails like that? I mean,
delete them.
Those are honestly the only emails that we just delete and we just don't respond to, honestly.
Well, nothing to do with it.
It's just a big fishing expedition for the prospective student athlete. And, we are looking for someone who, again, the idea of fit. So, when somebody contacts us, we want them to think that for some reasons, because they've done some research, that we're a good fit for them.
Right. And another thing is, you guys, I'm being sarcastic, obviously. You guys like it when parents write emails for kids?
No.
I mean, look, we don't want to have all contacts be with parents. I mean, we're not going to discount somebody because the initial email comes from a parent as opposed to a student athlete. But again, going back to that idea of fit, it's critical for us that the student athlete thinks that we're a good fit, not that the parent does, and that the relationship that we build in the process is with the student athlete and leads us to want to make an offer to that individual, as opposed to, having a relationship with the parent, which we often do in many cases, but not exclusively. We've got to have a good relationship with the prospective student athlete.
Right.
Yeah. I want the emails from the kids for sure. I get it if a parent gets involved. We want them involved, especially when you come for a visit. I love it when the parents are there. They're going to ask good questions, and it's important that they get to see our place. But it's got to be primarily the kid. I mean, from the start, it needs to be primarily the kid.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard you say, Cheese. Parents can bring up things that kids won't think of. So yeah, it's important to have for them to play a role, but kind of a healthy balance. I guess is what you guys are kind of getting at.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times when we get an email from a parent, they'll say that the reason that they're emailing is that their son is extremely busy with sports and school. And it's like, well, what do you think it's going to be like here? And if he can't handle it, at that level, why would we think that he's going to be able to handle it on his own at this level? And, that's a red flag, obviously.
I had one 2 days ago where the dad said, I can't get my son to start the email process. I can't get my son to start the recruiting. And I'm like, okay, so he's just extremely lazy and doesn't want to take care of his stuff. And that's not going to fit my locker room at all. I mean, it's a huge red flag.
Yeah. Yeah, Norris, I've heard you tell a story actually about a dad who was kind of pitting one school against another. That was a story that you told. You remember that?
Yeah,
story?
Absolutely. It's kind of one of the more unique ones. It was a kid that was playing in the state of Virginia, and the father was doing a lot of the initial correspondence, and saying things along the lines, like I remember specifically an email, because it was a Virginia kid and we recruit a lot of other Virginia kids. We had somebody that was a year ahead of him that it was committed, and they had just played against each other in a high school game. And the father sent me an email saying how, his son had just shut down William & Mary's top recruit, and Old Dominion was recruiting the kid, why isn't William and Mary recruiting him? And I mean, just all, big red flags. And sometimes what a lot of parents don't understand is that there's great collegiality amongst college coaches, especially, in a particular state or in an area. Not only do we play against each other, we are on the recruiting trail together. We spend a lot of time, we'll go out to dinner with one another. We do camps with each other. Whether it's we're working for one of our buddies at a camp or we partner with each other, there's just great collegiality. So we talk all the time. And, this parent's emails just started getting circulated amongst all the various schools that he was essentially pitting against each other. I don't know if that was his intention exactly, but, it was a lot of big red flags. In the end, we didn't hold it against the kid. We thought that, the kid was a good kid and we were able to develop some direct contact with the kid. And ultimately he played for us and had a really good career, William and Mary. But I had a specific conversation with the parent when we started getting a little bit more serious about it and said, look, some of the stuff that you're sending is out of order. And, as I look at your son's potential career here, it worries me. And we have to draw some boundaries here before we make a decision for him to come. And in fairness, the parent said, I understand, no problem, and was never an issue during the young man's career. But I know he burnt bridges with other schools. I know that there are a lot of other schools that just looked at that situation with some of the recruiting emails and stuff and said, why in the world would we take this kid? And they just crossed him off their list.
Right. One other thing I wanted to get to, I probably should have gotten to it earlier, was talking about some of the differences between Division I and Division III, and what it means, financially and all of that good stuff. So I don't know, like, talk about money, right? Norris, you're allowed to offer scholarships. Maybe you can delve into that a little bit. And then, Cheese, you talk about how you work with that within that issue as well.
Sure. So Division I, every Division I school is there's a legend. This guy, talk about having stories.
This is high tech.
He's got some stories.
Good job, guys.
Guest appearance by Coach Steve Shaw.
I mean,
man, the myth, the legend.
This will tell you, this guy recruited me to come to William and Mary, and that was 30 plus years ago. So it's a lot of experience there.
I stay around just for the coffee, Satch. Have a good day.
So, all right, man. So Division I, we're able to offer 9.9 scholarships, and that's in any given year. That's the total sum of scholarships that all the players on our team are receiving in a given academic year. There's also the ability to stack money. So if your school offers good financial aid packages based on merit, so academic money possibly, there could be some other types of scholarships in addition to need-based money. That kind of aid typically is not countable towards that 9.9, and certainly schools that have a little bit more flexibility as far as that aid goes can stack it and make it so that they're stretching their athletic aid a little bit further, which is a nice thing. But that's unique to every school. They determine how they package aid on their own on the non-athletic side. Division III is a little bit different, and obviously Justin will dive into that.
Right. On the Division III side, there's nothing that's labeled athletic money. Chris kind of alluded to it already. A lot of schools have the merit-based. Here we're a state school, so we have some merit-based scholarships. I think in the private schools, you'll find a lot of what Chris was talking about on the addition to the athletic scholarships. So you'll find some private schools that are able to offer some great programs, some great merit-based money, some something that's attached to a different program in their university, and all of a sudden you're cutting your tuition in half. Or I've seen some kids, I'm not trying to give a leg up to my private school counterparts here, but I have seen kids turn down D1 scholarships because the money that they were being awarded at a D3 private school based off of what the school could offer was more. They were getting a bigger scholarship to go to a Division III private school. And so, I totally understood that. And, we've got a couple of kids that are here for different reasons. They fit into some different categories that fall into the state. But Chris hit the nail on the head. You have to do that research. You have to find that. You have to look for those schools that have the different programs that you might fall into. And, our job is to help you a little bit, like I'll recruit kids based off of things that, oh, wow, this kid could fit into this category for us. And then I'll reach out and I'll see if there's some fit there that the kid finds as well. But that's just more on your end, try to find the schools that have the things that you could qualify for. And, you're going down quickly. You want to bring that money down as quick as you can.
Right. What are some other differences, like your seasons and timelines and that sort of thing?
But really, the main difference as far as what we do is people make this assumption that playing Division I soccer means a much more significant time commitment than playing Division III soccer, or a level of seriousness. Maybe there's different ways to describe it. The reality is that the only difference as far as what we're doing, outside of the athletic scholarship thing, which we've already covered, the only difference is what we're allowed to do in our spring season. And my understanding is that some of those rules and regulations are changing at the Division III level to make that a bit more expansive as well. But right now, that's the primary difference, is that as a Division I program, we have a little bit more flexibility, or we have a little bit more ability to spend time on the field and play a few more games in the spring than Division III programs. That's the main thing. The level of commitment is, I would say, the same, across the board. Most good Division III programs versus, good Division I programs.
Yeah, I think, Chris, you might check in a few days before my guys do in August, and the Division I Final Four is the following week. We have the same amount of games. And actually, I think that since we have more schools, our NCAA tournament is bigger. So in order to win the final, I think, how many people are in your Division I tournament?
48.
Okay, so we're at 60. Oh, gee, I think it's 64.
Yeah. But you have a few more programs too, right? So we're at I think it's 211 now.
Yeah, we're in the 400s. So it's it's off of percentage based, or it's closer to that at least. And but the moral story is here, we're playing the same amount of games. William Mary and Christopher Newport, Division I, Division III. If we both run the gambit, we win the national title. My season's ending 1 week before his, and his started 3 days before mine, and that's in the fall. We still have the 6 days a week rule that we have to follow with the NCAA the rules, and we have games, the same amount of games they have in the regular season. So it's really no difference. But like Chris said, it is different in the spring. So my guys are going through the last spring season of the old rules. So right now it's 15 days that we're allowed in Division III with the coaching staff present. And next year it jumps to 24. And they're even talking about more games as well. So it's going to get closer and closer. Chris, to your point about I've had a lot of kids say, Division I feels like a job. I don't want it to feel like a job. And I don't understand that either. My fall looks exactly like yours. And then in the spring, our business days are very much like yours. They have to be. And so I don't understand that, outside of our 15 days, 24 next year that we're allowed to do. Our boys are doing stuff all the time. It's technically not mandatory, but they're in the weight room. They're playing futsal. They're outside working out. They're doing things almost every single day. And it's on par with what you guys are doing. And they know they need to do it in order to keep up. And so I don't understand that either. I think that a lot of it has to do with each program has different timing. I've heard of some programs where they're starting at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. And I don't know, maybe a college kid is, well, I don't want to wake up at that time. I guess I get that. But other than that, the difference really isn't that noticeable. The spring, you can kind of see it a little bit in January where my guys are still, not doing as much. But once February rolls around and we're getting close to our spring, it's it's very similar to what they're doing in Division One.
Yeah. So I guess the moral of the story is don't get too caught up in the stigma, so to speak, of, Division One versus Division Three or any of the other divisions, really, because you just have to really search for the fit that's best for you and what you're trying to accomplish in your collegiate career, right? I mean, the differences are negligible. You can probably figure out the money, right? I mean, I guess, I don't know. I'm not too versed in that, but
Well, I always tell kids, really, the conversation is it money or no money? If you're getting a big scholarship, well, then, I got little kids right now. If Norris is throwing one of them a full ride, then that's going to push them quickly to the top. So I get that part. But if you're spending, 30 grand a year, it doesn't matter what school you're going to, the division, you're paying for it. So what experience do you want? Do you want to be on the field? How important is that? How quickly you're going to find yourself on the field? I told a kid he shouldn't go to me. He should turn down our offer, and he should go to another school that has the exact program that he wants, and it's the best in the state of Virginia. And it was obvious he should have gone there. He couldn't play soccer there, but he's now making some great money. He played some club while he was there, and it was a perfect fit. I talked to the kid regularly. He thanked me, thought it was a great idea, and he's in a good place now. So really the question is, if you're paying for school, what are you getting out of your experience? As a Division III coach, I like to say it's time to throw the divisions out the window at that point. But, really, if you're going to spend the money, what type of experience do you want? So that's a question I always ask the kids.
Okay. So what are some of the questions kids should be asking you guys in the beginning, through the process, and then in the end, right? So obviously they need to be very specific in what they're asking so that they can get the best information. I know that there's some questions that you guys, it's not that you don't like them, but you feel like they don't drill down enough into the meat of the topic. Like, what are you looking for in a player? There's some better ways to ask that question. Maybe you guys can address that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that is a question. I understand where people are coming from, and the information that they're seeking is important information, but it's just not a good way to ask the question because, that's a very, very broad question. There are a lot of factors that go into what we're looking for at a specific time. And, the better way to maybe ask the question is, how familiar are you with me as a player? Have you seen me play often enough to be able to kind of evaluate me for your program? And if so, how do you see me fitting into your program, or do you see me fitting into your program? I mean, those are better ways to get at whether, first and most importantly, the school and the program might be a good fit for you. But secondly, it'll give you a little bit more insight too into, what the coach's philosophy is, what they think your best qualities are, how they see you impacting their program, when they see you impacting the team, when they see you playing a meaningful role. Those are the things that are going to be a lot more important. So, pulling a question off of kind of a list that probably a lot of people publish out there of like things that you should ask a college coach about, like what, and phrasing it in a way where it just is very general. Like, what do you look for in a player or a student athlete? That's not that helpful. And it does force us to go into more of a monologue about this stuff and to try to get it on the right track that is helpful for the kid and for us. And it would be a lot better if people were a little bit more pointed about that specific question.
Yeah, I sent you guys a text a few weeks ago during the NFL scouting combine, and they were interviewing Mike McDaniel, the Dolphins head coach, and they said, "What qualities are you looking for in a player?" And he just kind of looked, and he's pretty sarcastic, and he just goes, "Good qualities." And that's the answer. That's the only answer that I could think of that it actually makes sense, because that's true. I loved it. I laughed, but that's true. And I was thinking about it a little bit more. Some of the top kids I ever recruited, a lot of times when I called them and I reached out and I made the impact on the kid that I liked, I told them on the phone call, this is what I loved about watching you play. This is the part of your game that I thought was fantastic. And this is how I want to fit you into my program. And well, there's your questions. What did you like in me? What did you see that, could fit in the program? And how do you see me fitting in? Basically, as quickly that eliminates all the other fluff that is super vague that, we can go a million different directions with. And now, unfortunately for the kid, that is after I've seen you play. So, all that stuff on the front end, the qualities and all that stuff, that let's go past that. Let's look into specifics about what you want out of your experience. Dive into the academic stuff. Go into what do you, what's your travel like? What are the things that are actually important to you with the soccer program? That's the stuff that we could really answer, and we could really help you, or we could see if there's a fit for us to go to the next step, which is to watch you play and see if there is a fit there.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if they're actually having a conversation with you, they're probably going to have the opportunity to spend some time around your players as well, or at least observe. And I imagine you guys are highly encouraging them to ask questions of the players, and you're also evaluating, your players' opinions of the recruits as they're on campus and that sort of thing. And chances are, some of your players know the kids that could be coming in. So I would just ask that you guys kind of provide some insights, like what are some good, I don't even know, like questions possibly that what information are you trying to leave with when you've interacted with current players in your guys' programs? If you were a recruit, obviously you're trying to understand what the coach is like and what the culture could be like. Is it cutthroat or is it supportive? Just those kinds of things, like as you are evaluating your interactions with other players that are existing players.
Yeah. I love it when the players come visit and they stay with my guys. I always encourage them to ask questions and dig. You're right. Both of our schools are state schools in Virginia. And so a lot of our recruiting is Virginia based. And so, a lot of times I'm bringing a kid on campus and they're going to know a guy or two, at least maybe a few more, whether they played against them or with them. And so it's easy for there to be a quick relationship and a quick discussion. And so, you're cutting out anything that might be awkward on the front end. But once you get past that, whether you're a kid that knows people on the roster or not, it is time. It's time to ask some questions, and don't just ask, the All-American kid that's, had a great career. Ask all the guys, and just do it randomly. You guys are gonna be hanging out. You're in the dining hall, or you're hanging out socially playing some FIFA or something like that. Just, hey, what's practice like? What's Norris? How is he as a coach, and what's he like on the sideline? What is Coach G's like? During training. How does he treat players or whatever? Those are the good questions that you can ask that'll see if you're a fit. And and if you have a relationship already with some of these guys, it's easy to say, what's he like to, the coach that I had in club or the coach that we had together in high school. And it'll really paint a good picture. And I always tell the kids, you got to ask multiple people. Get the guy that may not have played that much, or get the guy that maybe had to change position, or the walk-on, the kid that had to earn his spot, or, Norris's case, he's going to have scholarship kids and kids that are fighting for some money or fighting for, some playing time. And ask those guys too. Ask the ones like those. Are we getting a fair shake? You got to get those details.
Yeah, but you're not going to be able to find that specifically out. Hopefully, you're not going to be able to ask. So, are you what size scholarship are you on? Okay, well, you're the guy I want to ask.
Yeah, they may not get that answer.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. I think kids, they need to understand that we're the same. We encourage them to, to really spend. Again, we're talking about guys that we've invited for visits now. Right. So this is like somewhat far along in the recruiting process. This is not like every person that contacts us, we're saying, yeah, come and visit. We simply, not that we wouldn't entertain those things, but we just don't have that kind of time to entertain all of those people. So talking about after we've kind of gotten a little further down the line in the process and know something about guys and they know something about us usually. But we're in that case, if we've gotten that far, then we probably feel pretty confident that individual is going to be a good fit for us or help us at least in terms of the soccer. Maybe we're still figuring out the rest of it. And because we're trying to sell them on our school, we're going to, even if it's like we want you to visit, we want you to ask a lot of questions, we're going to try to make sure you're spending time primarily with guys that are fun people to be around and, are doing pretty well and are good representatives of our program because we are trying to sell what we have to offer. And so, that can be not misleading certainly, but it can be sort of slanted from the viewpoint of somebody who is doing well. It is important to try to get as much information as possible because of that.
And the chances are you're not going to be with your parents at that time. When you're with the guys, you're probably just you and the guys. It's going to feel like it's supposed to feel like when you're at the school. Your parents aren't going to be there. The coach isn't going to be, sitting at the same table with you at the dining halls or, in the dorm rooms. So, that's what it's going to feel like the most outside of being on the soccer field, which a lot of times you can sit there and go to the training sessions or, maybe you can go to a game and sit in the stands and watch the games in person. Of course, that's all stuff that a lot of times we can attach to a visit. But that's where the nitty gritty is. That's where this is what's going to be like next year if I decide to go here. That's the best picture.
So what's the give me a story about a kid on a visit and, the worst outcome possible, I
got a great story about that actually. And Cheese would know this guy. I'll tell you offline later. So we had a guy who was a great player. This is actually going way back to, around the time when I was playing actually, because I remember being involved in hosting. I wasn't his direct host, but one of my closest friends who was on the team had played with this guy. This guy was a little bit younger than us, had played with him growing up. And so he interacted with my buddy that was on the team. So he comes down and he's there for the visit. We all know it's a big deal. There's this guy's been like a youth national team kid and that sort of thing. And he, on Saturday, he comes on a Friday. He's doing like the whole official visit, 48-hour period. The schedule is he's coming Friday. He's going to spend some time. We've got a game on Saturday. He's going to stay Saturday night as well, go home Sunday. So he takes off. He leaves. His parents had gone out of town. So he drives home and he throws a party at his house. And then, his parents somehow find out that he's thrown a party, at home, and he blames it all on us. He says, these guys treated me badly, and so I just felt like I had to leave, and, I invited a few people over, and it got out of hand. So he blamed it all on us, that, we were these terrible people who just didn't treat him well, and he left to go home and throw a party because his parents were out of town.
And he didn't even invite you to the party.
Well, yeah, I mean, college parties are usually a lot more fun than high school parties anyway.
True. I vaguely remember. Yeah. That's try to keep it in between the lines when you're on your college visit.
Right. I mean, you are being, as much as it's important for you as a student athlete to have an immersive experience and get a sense for whether it's a good fit for you or not, you are also being evaluated by the current student athletes, by any of the support staff that meet with you, obviously by the coaching staff to, again, make sure that you're somebody that will come in and add positively to our culture, which we are constantly trying to make as good as possible.
Yep.
We had a kid a few years ago come in on a visit. We liked him a lot. He's a good player. We did our homework on him, but now it's time to find out the culture part. And everything was fine in the meeting with them and stuff. But the next day, when I'm able to see my guys again, the kid has left. My first question is always simple. What do you think of the kid? It's not a soccer question or anything. It's what do you think? And almost every time, like, yeah, whatever. He's a cool kid. Or most of the time, it's no big deal. The worst case scenario is like, oh, he's a little shy. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't care about that stuff. But you remember the few that where you're like, whoa, I kid a few years ago, I had 4 guys walk in unsolicited. I didn't bring them in. I didn't know the kid already left, and they were like, no, you cannot bring this kid in. And I mean, cool. Like, I stopped recruiting the kid, and at the end of the day, that the culture, the boys are the culture. If they're going to know better than anybody. And they added a few stories that the kid was doing and a couple of inappropriate things, and I was a little blown away. I didn't understand it, and sure enough, a couple weeks later, we actually bring in another kid from that same club team for a visit, and he invited himself back. And he comes in, and he's like, staying the night again. I'm just like, all right. He drove all the way out here. I didn't know the kid was even here until after the soccer game, and I go to say hi to the kid that we brought, and the kid just shows up, and like, okay. And so he just kind of invited himself back into the party again, and it was the same song and dance. And at that time, I had to remind him again, like, hey, we've moved in a different direction. And I tried to be nice. I think the message was sent. He committed somewhere else. But that's everything for us. When you're going to be in front of us with your family, that's hard for that to go wrong. But when you're with the guys, it's time to, let's see. They're testing you as well. They're seeing if you're going to fit in the locker room.
Right. Back up one step. So we're recording this at a time of year when spring breaks are coming up, and a lot of families take the opportunity to go visit college campuses, campi, whatever you want to say. Depends on what school you're at, right, Cheese? And then, so like how would a kid best prepare to pop in on you guys as they're breezing through campus for a half day or whatever their plans are? Maybe it's the first time you've ever heard from them. Maybe they haven't emailed you at all, or maybe they've sent one email and you didn't see the email or something like that. So what's the most effective way to make contact with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, all of those are what you just named. Is all that stuff happens. Like I said, there's a kid coming in here today, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm taking a tour. I'm around. I'd love to just poke my head in and say hello." And like, I don't know the kid at all. I don't know if he's any good. I'm not sure, but I knew that I was going to be on campus. I had this meeting, and I was going to be around for my guys for a little while today. And yeah, sure, I could spend a few minutes with you. And so I think that's probably the best route. I mean, if we're available, I think I would put it in there. Hey, if you're available and you have a few minutes to spare, we'd love to just say hi. I would love to put a face to the name. And, I'm playing in a tournament next week. That way you get to see me a little bit beforehand. And I have a question or two. And I would keep it brisk, keep it to that, and have that stuff prepared. I mean, the worst one is when a kid walks in, he was able to get me for a few minutes before practice, and he has nothing to say to me. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to say to you? I don't even know who you are. Come prepared with a couple of questions. Make sure it's the nitty gritty that's going to kind of answer what you need to know. Like, I play this position. What does that look like? Something along those lines that you need to know. And then say, all right, thank you very much. I hope to see you next week at my tournament or something along those lines. And I'm going to remember you now. I'm going to, while I'm out recruiting, I'll be, oh yeah, that's the kid that I saw last week. He's a nice kid. I'm going to at least watch you play. I'm going to put my eyes on you and do homework on you and not just watch all 22. I'm going to focus on you a little bit more because you put in the homework on the front end.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I would say be prepared, certainly. And, try to give us lead time, try to make sure that at a minimum, it's several days before you plan on arriving. If you can do it a couple weeks out, then great. We aren't always going to be able to meet with everybody, but we'll try. Sometimes we're out of town or our schedule on a particular day just doesn't allow for it. But we'll certainly try. And the more time we have to prepare and not have our schedule fill up, then the more chance there is that we'll actually be able to spend a little bit of time with you.
Right. Looking through my notes here to see if we have anything else we need to hit. You guys have any good stories from recruiting this winter? Your travels? Things you saw that impressed you? Things that you saw that kind of made you say, no, thank you?
I feel like the good stories are always the ones that make you laugh and shake your head. The ones where you're like, well, that kid just hurt himself. Something along those lines where, we talk about the kids that celebrate and say something ridiculous. I think it was last week we were on the talk together. We were talking about the kid that screamed in the stadium. I forget what the exact words were, but he was talking to the referee that was 2 feet away because he disagreed with the call, and I heard him 60 yards away at the top of the stadium. And I mean, it's just a ridiculous comment that everybody in the stadium could hear, and you're just like, what are you doing? I mean, we all have stories like that, and I always tell kids, like, there's 100 kids in the state of Virginia that could probably come play for me in a year. I'm looking for reasons to say no to you, and some kids are just handing them to you like that when they do something ridiculous.
Yeah.
My favorite story actually pertains to Cheese's staff. So, if you've been doing this, you've been recruiting for a while.
I'm firing whoever this is, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you're really paying him anyway. So won't be a big loss. No, if you've been doing this for a while, like you will know this exact scenario. You're next to a field watching a game, ball comes off the field and it's heading right at you. And, all of us as coaches, we have those moments where we still think like we've got it. And, we're going to be able to do something clever, like, flick a ball up and volley it back, or drive a ball, directly to the goalkeeper's hands or something along those lines. Like, and we've probably, most of us tried it at some point in our younger career. But, older guys now, you'll see, like, they'll just, like, maybe stop it and just roll it to the nearest person involved, or maybe not even stop it. Maybe just get out of the way, And I was with Cheese's goalkeeper coach at an event recently, and one of those moments happened, and he tried something clever, and it did not come off at all. And I had made sure that everybody within earshot knew that he was the CNU coach.
I was, I think, 6 fields away, and he immediately sent me a text. So that's how important this was to him.
I told him he was going to have to do damage control with all the kids who were on that field who just saw that.
Well, it's true. When that ball's getting close, I'm mostly worried about getting hit by it. So I'm like, man, I'm getting out of the way. I don't want some weird deflection hit me in the face. A lot of times it's cold. It's a lot of cold recruiting events, and I'm nobody to impress. I got boots on. I'm not worried about it. So I use my hands most of the time. Ball rolls to me, I'm using my hands. I'm confident with them. I'll pick them up. I'll roll you back the ball. And last thing I need is for you to see me like toe blow something terribly, and you're like, oh God, what's that guy going to teach me?
Right, there you go.
Yeah, I'm gonna do as I say, not as I do, guy. Anyway, so it's just get out of the way. Just get out of the way.
Yeah, for sure. I think we've kind of hit all the points that I wanted to hit. We've talked about the emails, visits, scholarships, D1, D3 differences. So one thing we didn't just talk about was, on the flip side of a kid screaming at a referee, geez, what's been something that you can recall that where a kid kind of impressed you with his behavior, not soccer, not skill, but,
Sure.
where you were like, damn, that's a good kid.
Yeah, well, there's a team I'm recruiting pretty heavy right now. 4 of them are coming to me, and they've won their butts off over the years, and they've won a ton. And I was watching them a year ago. I was actually a field over watching a different game, and I heard a goal was scored and a big roar. And I kind of looked over. I go, oh, okay, they're losing now. And then I heard them get scored on again. And I go, oh, they're now down 2-0. I haven't seen them in this situation yet. I'm going over there. And so I did. I left the game I was watching. I walked over there. They're now in a terrible situation. They're down 2-0. You know, they've got adversity slapping them in the face. And I was really excited to see how they were going to respond. And they responded greatly. You know, in this situation, they were doing everything they could to get back. They weren't climbing on each other's backs like they did when they were little kids. You know, so it was nice to see that. I knew that I was recruiting the right kids once I saw them, because we're going to find ourselves in situations like that, and I'm going to need them to have their heads on straight, and let's try to get this game back. And you know, so that's a team example I've seen. I'm sure there's been individual examples where, you know, a kid got scored on, and the opposite of immediately blaming his team or anything, he quickly, hey, ownership, I messed up there, guys, and you know, immediately jumped into the next play and moved on. I mean, when you come to us, we know you're going to make mistakes. We know that we're going to be put in tough situations. I need to know that you're going to be able to handle it, and I'm going to be able to look at you and know that, okay, well, he'll make up for that. This game isn't over just because of one play. And you know, I love seeing those situations. I love seeing you in an uncomfortable place on the field.
Norris, you got one? Or
I mean, I think I gave you one already, but not necessarily on this podcast.
okay, yeah. Check all the other podcasts. Want to hear what impresses Norris? Yeah, you guys have anything else to add? I mean, I like to try to keep these at about an hour, so we're getting close. Okay. Cool.
You know what? I had one thing that I was thinking about earlier that I would like to add. Just that, you know, we were talking about some of the differences between Division I and Division III. We also hit on the idea of just trying to find the right fit. And, you know, I think if you're someone that is kind of who we kind of use the term tweener, if you're a guy that is being recruited maybe by Division I and Division III schools, you know, you can usually tell where you fit or where you belong in college soccer based on who's recruiting you. That's if you're in a fairly traditional situation where you're on a club team that's being seen at least by colleges in your area. And so you can kind of tell where you probably should end up based on who's actually recruiting you, who's having meaningful conversations with you. When it comes to fit, you know, a lot of times when we see guys make a choice that we think is maybe not the right choice, at least from a soccer perspective, meaning that, you know, they've been offered an opportunity in a program, but if they want it to be a really meaningful experience to them where they're going to be significant contributors at some point in their career, then this may not be the right fit. Usually it's because their ego has been too big of a player in their decision-making process. And so the last thing that I want to add is just, you know, try not to let your ego or your perception of how your decision will be evaluated by others to impact that decision too much. I think that's where when people go wrong in their decision to find the right place, that's usually a big factor.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point. Jeez, you got anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I see it all the time. And as a Division III coach, you'll see kids when they commit to a school, you know, you'll see their Instagram or whatever post. If it's a Division I school, they are putting that in the first couple words. You know, I'm going Division I. Like, they'll make a big point about that, and that's great. You know, I've got no problem with that. If you're in the right place, the right fit, good for you. Awesome. There's a lot of great Division I places that can give you that awesome experience that we always talk about. But after that initial post, your next thing that you're going to be able to talk about is your experience. And there's nothing else. Like, you can then a week later be like, hey guys, just a reminder, I committed here. Like, yeah, we all know. Like, what did you accomplish? What are you getting done? What did you experience? That's always the final straws. Like, what did you get out of it? And, you know, I've seen a lot of kids post that awesome thing, and then within 18 months, they're not on a soccer team anymore, or they're in the portal, or they're unhappy. And you just feel terrible for them. And you always want to ask that kid, like, what could you have done differently, or what would you have done differently? And I think a lot of that has to do with what we've discussed here today and on some of these other podcasts, and then a lot of these other coaching seminars where they're talking about the recruiting process. And I've got a laundry list of those kids. I mean, there's 10 today. I can give you names, and it's just like, okay. I hope that those kids, I hope it works out. And, if it's a kid I was invested in on the front end and he committed somewhere else, I do feel bad when I see his name in the portal, or if I feel like, oh man, I hate when I'm right on some of these kids, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you guys recruit at the same events. You see all the same kids. You guys are constantly going back and forth about kids that you've seen and that sort of thing. And the great thing about you two in particular is that you'll be honest with kids. I mean, if you guys need a resource after you've been watched by these guys, they'll give you an honest assessment. I'm assuming like that you're going to tell them. I've heard you specifically tell stories about telling a kid, this is what I think. So make sure you're asking those types of questions too as a recruit. So anyway, got anything else?
That's all I got.
Cool. All right. It's another. We'll see you out on the trail, right, Cheese?
I think
Our tagline.
I think you're hitting it now.
All right.